Attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi there, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for joining us for today's webinar. It is 6:30 a.m. here in San Diego, California. Before I do anything, as always, can I just ask if you could please raise your hand to let me know that you can hear me loud and clear? Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm just going to put your hands down now. What I'd also like to ask you as well, I'm going to put them down, is to ask you, so who on this call now was also on the last call with Vishen? Who managed to make both calls? Okay, there's a few of you, yeah, because it was quite late last night, depending on where you're from, and also early this morning. So, okay, thank you very much. It was a really great session. For those of you that missed it, we had a few technical difficulties with the sound, but it was a absolutely fantastic session. But anyhow, right. So as always, I would welcome you all to post your feedback. If you have any questions or comments that we don't get to, please feel free to post them on our Facebook wall. You can find that at facebook.com/WBECS. That has been growing like crazy. Our tribe is growing very fast. You'll find lots of fantastic information on there. We try to keep everything really high level, and the coaches that you will find on there are your peers. They're attending the same sessions as you, and feel free to collaborate, communicate, and get to know each other. There's a lot of coaches from all around the world, and there's a lot of opportunities for you to come together and learn together. So please feel free to jump on our wall, facebook.com/WBECS. Okay, so today we have a super session on coaching emotions. We have Joseph O'Connor and Andrea Lejas, and we are very excited to have them joining us today. Joseph is an internationally recognized author, trainer, executive coach, and consultant. He has given training in 26 countries and is a leading author and trainer in coaching and neuro-linguistic programming, as well as systemic thinking. He is the author of 18 books on coaching, NLP, training, sales, communication skills, management, and again, systemic thinking. Andrea is an executive coach, author, consultant, and widely experienced coach trainer. Together, they are the authors of two books of coaching. One, Coaching with NLP, and another, How Coaching Works. Andrea and Joseph are directors of Lambent UK, and which is licensed through Paul Ekman International to deliver trainings, and they are trainers of Paul Ekman work on deception and emotions. So without further ado, I'd like to hand over to my good friends Andrea and Joseph. Over to you guys.
Thank you, Ben.
Thank you.
Okay, well, I think we've got a really interesting session and a little bit unusual here. Just don't really need to introduce myself. Ben's done extremely well. Just to say that the work in executive coaching that I do has really broadened for me recently with the work on emotions that we'd like to share with you.
Yeah, because when we think about coaching, they are much more than just words. A lot of people that we know in our experience, when they do coaching, they think much more about the verbal content. And there is a whole universe parallel to that, so all together with the verbal content that we want to explore with you here. That's to do with the emotions and how to read emotions.
Yes, after all, the words are only just one channel. We have face, we have voice tone, we have verbal style, and of course body language. So, just to give a brief kind of introduction as to what we're going to do, we're going to take you through the importance of emotions in coaching for ourselves and particularly for our clients. Why are they important? We're going to walk through some of the universal signals of emotion. And when we talk about emotion, we're not talking about overt displays of emotion. We're not talking about the sort of coaching where if the client doesn't cry twice, then it hasn't been a good session. This is a little crazy for us. So when we talk about emotion, we talk about the meaning that things have. We talk about the energies that that things have. We talk about the emotion, the thing that moves us, because there is no thinking without feeling and no feeling without thinking. The two always go together. So we want to add a whole other dimension to our coaching today and give you some practical examples as well. Okay. So, thinking and feeling, yes, they're two words, but they describe the same process. And now, in neuroscience, we're understanding more and more about how the two go together. And it's not like the top half of the brain, the cerebral hemispheres, gives you logic and thinking, and then that kind of bottom part of the brain tries to mess things up with emotion. It's integrated, it's coordinated, it all comes from the same place.
And during a coaching session, if we manage to pay attention to our clients' expressions, not verbal expressions, but actually micro expressions or facial expressions, we can then challenge not just the verbal contents that they're presenting, but also some emotions that we can see, maybe some incongruence between the verbal and the non-verbal, that maybe the client is talking about situation that could be or should be a happy situation, but they look angry or sad. It doesn't match the appearance and the content. So if we manage to pay attention to what is behind the words through the facial expressions, this can make a much richer coaching session.
Yes, and the face is so expressive. We just look at some of the faces here. You know, with a coaching client, they just don't sit with the third, on the top row, the third face along from the left. That's kind of a nothing face. There's no expression there. Clients never do that. They're always expressing themselves. And the face is so expressive, it's evolved that way. We can actually see facial expressions from 40 feet away, in order to know, of course, whether people are friendly, whether they're happy, whether sad or angry, so that we can interact with them, so that we can communicate with them and build relationships, because that's what emotions are about. They're about building relationships.
Yes, and it's the interesting thing about that is that imagine if every human has a clear universal signal that reveals their genuine feelings about whatever is happening, about what you're saying to them or about what they're thinking. How useful will be that during a coaching relationship and in a coaching session?
And we know too that whereas words are fairly easy to control, we can think about what we say, we can consider, we can change things in mid-sentence. Emotional displays aren't like that, because emotions are so deep within us, and because the triggers and the feelings come up so quickly. The micro-expressions of emotion, and the micro-expression is an expression of emotion that is quicker than 1/5 of a second. They're not controlled. They can't be controlled consciously. Therefore, they are, as it says, a genuine feeling. People may try to squash them after that, but they will be there.
There is a flash. It's for, as Joseph said, just for fraction of a second, you can see something that it may not match what the person is saying, and this it's very powerful if you notice, so you can challenge.
And just to say something really important right at the start, which we'll continue to emphasize, you may see the emotion, but you don't know why the emotion is there. So if you see a client suddenly gets angry, you don't know whether they're angry with themselves, with you, with the situation, or they've suddenly had some thought about a bad thing that happened 2 or 3 days ago, and they suddenly remember that. So with this comes some responsibility, and to know that there are no easy, pat answers to this. You're always there as a coach with your client, really being with them and really trying to understand them.
Your job, therefore, is not to interpret, to do interpretation of what you're saying, but to recognize what you're saying and ask your clients what could it mean, because they know better than anyone what could it be.
So this could be really useful if we remember these things, if we're sensitive enough and acute enough to be able to catch them. Because if we're talking about micro expressions of less than 1/5 of a second, you've only got to look down at your notes and you could lose 2 or 3 of them. So this is really about paying attention, not just listening now, but really paying attention to what the person, and of course the expressions, emotions also to come into the voice, but this is not something we can cover today. So it could be really useful, absolutely, and could be a real problem as well if you jump to conclusions, if you're not in rapport, if you're not really trying to build a good relationship with your client.
Or if you're trying to fit your client in your own model. As I said before, and I think it's important to reinforce, our job as coaches is not to catch the clients in a lie or in incongruence. Our job is to help our clients. So one way of misusing that knowledge is to try to catch your clients in what you believe that could be a lie, that they are not being completely honest, so you're trying to challenge them in that way. But in the other way, one good way of using that knowledge is, as I said, just recognizing the emotions that are there, and there are plenty of emotions all the time, and see if how do they play together, how do they play as a group, as a system, and how this is helping or not your clients, and what can you do about that. Therefore, we would like to present that graphic that's based on the Goleman work on the emotional intelligence, and it's basically about 4 steps of managing emotions. So it starts with, of course, your self-awareness, you understanding, you realizing which emotions do you feel, which emotions are part of you, how you're feeling in that moment during a coaching session. And then once you're aware of that, it's your own management. What do you do with that? How can you use those emotions in the best way for both you and your clients? Just after you do step 1 and 2 very thoroughly, then you manage to go to step 3. That is now what we are saying about recognizing the emotions in your clients. For after that, then help them to manage it.
Yeah, so this is of course from emotional intelligence, and it's for coaches. I think it's really summarizes everything. You've got to be sensitive to your own emotions. You then manage them, and this is a model, of course, for your clients, because coaches are leaders in terms of they model the skills that they ask the clients. And this particular webinar is going to be focused on quadrant 3, because we're becoming aware of others' emotions in a way that perhaps we haven't done before, so that then we can go into quadrant 4 and manage them. So there's our kind of framework for emotions, and let's move just on to the next, because when we say emotions, I mean, what do we mean? What do we mean by emotions? And Paul Ekman, whose picture is there on the left, has done a lot of work in emotions, which many of you may well have read about or heard about. It's written up extensively in Malcolm Gladwell's book, Blink. So if we think about emotions then, emotions help us to deal with matters of importance to our welfare without thinking. So a couple of important things there. One is it happens without thinking. We don't, when something frightens us, we don't think, oh, shall I be frightened? Yes, I think I will be. we're frightened. That's it. When we get angry, we don't kind of think, oh, I don't know whether I'll get angry or not, shall I? It happens. We get flashes of anger. The same with many emotions that come up, and of which there are some that are universal. We'll come on to that in a moment. So it happens without thinking. It's reliable and genuine, and it's about values. It's about matters of importance to our welfare and the welfare of those that we love.
The interesting thing about that is that genuine emotion normally shows as a flash in your face. If, for example, someone gets surprised, you can see a very quick opening of the eyes and the mouth. You can notice the expression of surprise in a person's face. But if this same expression lasts too long, then you know already that's fake, because true emotion normally flashes in your face. And of course, you can still be happy and still be smiling after 10 minutes, but that's genuine first emotion that you feel normally presents itself as a flash in your face, what we call micro-expressions.
Yeah, and Andrea just brought up an important point about then people can pretend emotions, but the pretense of emotions is always going to have something wrong with it. It's not going to be authentic, it's often too long. But this is something that we'll deal with in more detail in our other WebEx presentation on deception and credibility. But we do have a couple of polls here for you, just to see how many of you know about the universal emotions in terms of some emotions have universal signals. Paul Ekman did the research in New Guinea, in Brazil, all over the world. It doesn't matter which country you go to, there are universal signals of a certain number of emotions. And we just want to do a couple of quick polls to see, as a little kind of fun test, whether you're familiar with these.
It's what's true emotions. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what I'm doing, I'm just to let everyone know, there's going to be 2 polls and there are 10 answers altogether. So do you want to clarify how people vote for that?
Yeah, out of those 10, 7 will be emotions with universal expressions, only 7. 3 will be feelings, which we can think about and are important, no doubt, but they're not emotions in terms of universal signals that happen without thinking, as we're talking about.
What it means is that there are several emotions that the universal signals or the facial expressions of it are exactly the same, independent of the culture, the gender, the race, anything. It's all around the world. When someone feels afraid, for example, it will show the same kind of movements in certain muscles or facial muscles. And this is genuine and is universal. So what we are trying to find out now is how many of you can catch the 7 emotions that have universal facial signals.
Okay, so I'm just going to close off this first half of the poll. The results from that are 26% of you have said shame, 85% of you have said anger, 80% of you have said sadness, 87% of you have voted on fear, and 16% on guilt.
Okay, moving on.
I'm going to close that poll. And then there you go, you can see that there. Everyone can see the results there. Okay, so I'm now going to hide the results and start the second part. Okay, if you can vote again, everybody, on which you feel the following are emotions with universal facial signals. Okay, we'll give everyone just about another 20 seconds, 20, 30 seconds to vote. We've got about 50% of you have voted, 60% of you have voted, 70% of you have voted. Okay, maybe 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, I'm going to now close the poll and share the results with you. And there you can see that 24% have said hate, 33% have said contempt, 64% disgust, 83% happiness, and 89% surprise.
Aha. I'm surprised that surprise has the biggest score. Okay, excellent. So then let me just skip across here to our next slide where you'll see what they are. The 7 emotions with universal facial expressions. And on the left here we have a young lady who doesn't like broccoli, I think. And underneath there we have a tribesman from New Guinea who's thinking about a dead rotting pig. And the expression is the same. So we have sadness, we have anger, we have surprise, happiness, good, fear, contempt, that's a little bit surprising, and disgust. So, just wanted to give you those, and just coming back here briefly, what do emotions do? They can save your life. Fear certainly can. You need to move quickly and get away. Or, of course, enrich your life. Surprise, happiness. They motivate behavior, emotion, moving, motivation, movement. In fact, you could say perhaps that there is no motivation without emotion. They're essential to building relationships. Emotions are what we have. We build relationships with emotion, and we respond to emotion in others in order to build relationships. And emotions are uncontrollable in the sense that we can't stop them arising. Of course, we can manage them afterwards. That's not to say that they're completely uncontrollable once you're aware of them. But there's a certain thing happens before you become aware that is not controlled by you consciously.
What we mean about that is, for example, if you're walking around the forest and suddenly you see a snake and you're afraid of snakes like I am, I can't stop myself feeling afraid. Now, how I manage that emotion is up to me, and also can save or not my life, can help me to save my life. But the rising of the feeling of the fear is uncontrollable. What we do with that, after all, then is up to us, and relates back to that graphic that we showed earlier about Goleman work.
Yeah. Emotions also have coordinated and organized, so that when you're angry, it all happens together. You know, the blood pressure goes up, the blood goes to the face, the hands bunch, the chin goes forward, the mouth, the lips tighten, the eyebrows go down. It all happens together. It's all of a piece. It's not like we have to think about each particular time. I mean, the autonomic nervous system is involved there. We don't control that. And, as we're talking about here, reliable universal signals. And we're going to look at the facial ones here. So, here we are. And just let me orient you a little bit here. The first face there is neutral, because without a baseline, you can't really decide very easily, as we'll see. And some people have a mouth or eyebrows that looks like it could be emotional to start with. I met a man a few days ago whose eyebrows looked like he was sad. He wasn't, but because of the way his eyebrows were quite naturally, looked like he was sad. There are other people who continually kind of shift their glasses up their nose, and this can look like they're disgusted with you if you look at the fourth picture along. But it's not. It's just a habit. So this neutral baseline is really, really important to kind of see what that is before you can go further.
Once you have the baseline defined to that particular person, then you can start detecting the expressions that shows different emotions. Not before that. There is no special, exactly the same face that show happiness for everybody. There are the same muscles involved, but the way that's expressed depends very much what's the baseline being the neutral face of that person specifically.
So you'll also see little numbers there. which connect with action units, which are groups, one or groups of muscles that actually control this. So this has been very carefully researched. There is huge handbooks on how the 40+ muscles in the face actually move. It's extremely complex and expressive, the face. And some of these expressions involve a number of different muscles all being coordinated completely together. So anyone who wants to go further, there's a lot you can do. But let us just take you through briefly these 7 emotions. Starting with the second one at the top there, anger. So you'll see with anger, the lips roll in and the eyebrows come down, and you'll see that kind of dimple between the eyebrows there that's formed. The eyelids tighten, so you get this kind of glare. And, you know, I think you look at that, you're pretty sure what that person is feeling. And I think it's important to say here that Andrea's already said about micro-expressions where they flash on the face, but you don't necessarily get all of these together. So someone can just start being angry and the lips can tighten, but nothing else will happen. Or maybe the eyebrows come down a little bit and there's a little bit of a glare and nothing else happens. These are partial expressions. So it's not about the whole thing happening necessarily, but it can happen in part, and this is where your acuity becomes really important.
This is also what some people call, if you're not educated, if you didn't study this material for Ekman studies and research, some people say that I don't know exactly what was it, but I had the intuition that something was not right. And because those micro expressions are subtle expressions, we can realize it, not necessarily we notice it before we do the study. But they are always there, and because they are there, some people call it intuition before they know the science behind it.
Yeah, and also with these emotions, some muscles are more reliable than others. In other words, with some muscle movements, they are extremely difficult to do consciously. Some you can do consciously, but for example, in anger, the thinning and bringing in of the lips is very difficult to do deliberately. That makes it a reliable sign of anger. And of course, anger is one of the emotions that can cause a large amount of trouble if it goes out of control. So then we come on to contemptuous. This is a late entry, as it were, into the charts of emotion. It wasn't one of the 6 first of all, and then it just came in a bit later when it got proved that actually contempt is present in primates as well. And contempt is just that lip corner lifting up. Can be on the left side, can be on the right side. There's a kind of sense of the person's looking down their nose at you, and they feel that they are superior. So that's a very simple one, and actually very easy to fake, if you ever wanted to fake contempt. It's fairly strong display rules, social display rules on it, so not many people actually go to fake that one. Not a popular emotion to see in others, but if you see it, then, and it's a genuine one and it's about you, then this could be a considerable problem. Then we come on to disgust. Now with disgust, you'll see that the nose is raised up, and this can also kind of wrinkle up with the eyebrows as well, which makes it look a little bit like anger. However, that upper lip is raised and the teeth are showing. So disgust is about, there's something bad happening here. Don't like this, and I want to get away from it. Again, not something that you want to see about you or any particular situation. You'll see it all the time with regard to unpleasant smells and unpleasant sights. But if it happens with regard to people, then this is a very strong indication that there's a breakdown in the relationship. So then we move on to fearful. Now you'll see with fear, there is the mouth is drawn across in a kind of more in a straight line, slightly down, but the mouth gets stretched. and then the eyebrows go up, but they're also drawn together, and this is reliable. It's not just that they go up in surprise, but they're drawn together as well, and then the eyes open, because you see something you're afraid of, you want to really take it in, stop, there's a threat, and you need to act. Maybe you need to run, maybe you need to fight, you don't know yet, but it's that kind of cold moment where you start, something's going to happen. So mouth across, eyes, very often there's a partial expression just in the eyes, that the eyes will widen suddenly and then go back again, and somebody has thought of something that's fearful. So you might see this in clients if they're talking about something, and if they're talking about something which doesn't seem to be fearful and they flash this, then this is worth exploring. So moving on again, happy. Happy is the great one. The smile there with the lip corners raised, we all see that. However, it's easy to do that. What isn't easy to do is the kind of crinkling around the eyes. That's where the muscle round the eyes contracts. It causes crow's feet, and it also causes a kind of narrowing of the eye. This is reliable. It's a reliable smile. If you look at people smiling, once you know this, you'll be able to see whether it's a genuine smile with the eye involved, or whether it's just a false, polite, or masking smile, which is the easiest way to placate someone or to hide some other emotion. Paul Ekman actually thinks that there's about 16 happy emotions altogether, which is great because they're all bundled under happy for the moment. But things like awe and wonder and that kind of triumph that you see in the faces of Olympic athletes, or when a client's done something really great, and even the feeling of pride that you feel when a client's done something really great. There's a lot of things, a lot of research still to be done there. Sad. Now you'll see with sad, the lip corners droop down. This is not so easy to do, but in particular, the eyebrows get pulled up in the middle, just in the middle. They get pulled up in the middle, otherwise they stay in the same place. And this is a reliable sign of sadness. And just to give you a practical example, I was with a client a couple of weeks ago, and they were talking about a party where they were. And on the face of it, it was a great time. They said they were having fun, they were meeting with a lot of friends and people from their own work, and also people from other companies. And he was just talking about this in a general sort of way. And yet, 3 or 4 times, the eyebrows, they're just twitched up in the middle there. And I'm thinking, there's something else here. So when he'd finished, I said, it's interesting what you were saying about that party. Seemed like a good time, but I just get this idea that maybe you're a little bit sad about something there. And he thought for a moment, and then he said, yes, you're right. You're right. And then he started talking about a lot of things that he was sad about in terms of business and in terms of the sorts of, shall we say, backstory to the conversations that he was having. And that's where the session went, and it was an extremely valuable session, and I'm not sure that it would have gone there or been so valuable without me bringing up that question. And I wouldn't have brought up that question unless I noticed that particular sign. And finally, surprise. Yes, mouth open, eyes wide, eyebrows straight up. Nice and straightforward. It's like, ha, I pay attention. And as Andrea said, if this goes on more than a second or two, it's a fake. And surprise is a kind of transition emotion. It always moves on to something else. Happiness, or sadness, or fear, or
Disgust.
Disgust. Broccoli again. No. Or whatever. So this is a very, very brief journey through these emotions. Very brief indeed. But hopefully gives you a sense of the interest and complexity and possibilities that this can bring up once you start to know about this stuff.
And we'll be exploring much more about this subject on the 26th of June when we do our official summit presentation. So you're very welcome to come and join us on the 26th of June.
Yes, where we'll be going more deeply into this and also talking about deception and credibility in the coaching relationship. So that's our presentation. There's a lot there, and we know that we're kind of skimming over quite a bit, but we really want to just pique your interest a little bit to show you the wide and interesting possibilities that there are there, and open now to any questions that you might have.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, guys. What a super session. We have lots of questions already. I'm not going to ask for any more questions because we already have lots. Okay. What are the dangers in misreading these expressions when coaching?
Well, if they're universal expressions and you're good at it, then you won't misread it. That's the first thing. There's a danger in misreading. You know, if you see sadness and you misread it as anger, then yeah, you're wrong. And if you follow that up, then there's going to be a problem. So that's one thing. There's a danger in misreading. Second thing is, as we talked about, if you read correctly, you have a choice there. You have an ethical choice. What do? Do you mention it? Do you not mention it? Do you leave it aside for a moment? This is then an ethical choice on your part as to what you do with that information. And as they say, the responsibility of knowledge and skill brings responsibility.
Also about the sensibility of the coach to know they may choose to bring it up and question or challenge that, but if the client is not prepared to explore this subject, if, for example, in Joseph's example of his client, he was not prepared to talk about what made him sad during that party, then it's up to the sensibility of the coach to know that it may not be the right moment to talk about that and just let it go.
Thank you very much for that. Can you hear emotional microsignals when coaching on the phone? And if so, do you have any hints around that?
Whoa. Depends on the phone line, of course. Can be distorting. There are signals in the voice for emotions. Yes, it'll tend to drop in sadness. It'll tend to raise up in anger, get a bit of an edge to it. There's a kind of breathy quality in surprise and happiness sometimes. So there will be something in the voice, but it's one channel, and there are many other possibilities.
And one more thing, just to raise it up, is that pay attention, that is always about baseline. If we think that because the person is speaking softly, they are sad, this is not necessarily so. If this is their baseline, if it's their normal way of talking. So whatever you pay attention to while you're coaching on the telephone, always contrast with what is normal for that client, not for your model of the world, but for that client. Then if you see some strong change in voice tone, in speed, in pauses, then it may sign to something, but it's still, we don't know exactly what causes it, so it may be something to explore.
Yeah, so always explore with respect and be prepared for the client to say no, and that's fine.
Okay, next question. What about people who don't have many facial expressions at all?
Well, some people, some cultures have display rules. There are some cultures that are less expressive in terms of being able to read the faces. But we're talking about universal facial expression of emotions here. So they are present in everybody. The two questions. One is, are they obvious or are they subtle and partial or micro?
And also, if there is any Botox.
Yeah, Botox can really screw this up as well.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is, of course, it's about us. Are we acute enough to see the signals when they're there, or whether we think there's nothing there? So there's two aspects to that, as well as the chemical one.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for that. Okay, the next question is this. What is the benefit for my client or for me as a coach to be able to read and articulate my client's expressions instead of just prompting what my intuition tells me what's there?
Well, intuition is great, but intuition also needs education. I think we all, as coaches, have great intuition when we pay attention. And what we're saying here is that however great your intuition, if you educate your intuition, if you gain more, so however good your intuition is at the moment, it's the result of training, of observing, of learning, and then we have it at a certain level. So what we're saying here is we can take it to another level where your intuition will be even better and you'll get even finer distinctions and be able to help your clients even more.
So once you educate yourself on that micro expressions, for example, of course the intention is not that you are just paying attention to that, otherwise you'll distract you of all the other messages that the client is giving to you. But once you integrate this knowledge inside you, you can use that much better. You can still call it intuition, but now you have much more scientifically researched material to base your intuition in. Therefore, you have a better chance to be accurate.
Yeah, just let me underline what Andrea said about scientifically researched. There's a lot of stuff around about this, and a lot of it has no basis whatsoever. There's a lot of myths. So what we're talking about here is scientifically validated research that you can count on.
For decades.
For decades, yeah, 40 years of it.
It's super. Thank you
One more question.
very much.
Yeah. One more question then.
Okay, one more question. How would you introduce the theme of emotions in a country where emotions are not socially acceptable to display?
Well, there's a difference, isn't there, between what we feel on the inside and what we're allowed to display in certain contexts and social situations. For example, I've done a lot of work in Japan, where the display rules are much stronger than in the UK, and a lot of work in Latin America, where the display rules are a lot more lax than in the UK. Now, that's, if we talk about Japan, Japanese people feel deeply. And there is absolutely no issue about talking about deep feelings. They're prepared to, and they feel them. It's just that the display rules are that much stronger. So, emotions are universal. They're human. They're part of us being human. They're the richness of life. Without emotion, I can't imagine life without emotions. So, we're talking about something so human and basic here for ourselves, and so human and basic in terms of the relationships that we make with others, that at least in my experience, it doesn't matter what culture you're in. You talk to emotions, you're talking to the person.
Yeah. So in some countries, you may have bigger displays of emotions, and some countries there's much more controlled displays of emotions. But in any country of this world, everybody feels. They have emotions, and it will show, even if it's a microsecond or micro fraction of a second, they will show in their face. And if we're working with human beings, we are also working with emotions. We are not just working with logic. And therefore, as coaches, it's our duty to recognize the person as a whole and not just as part of it.
Super. Thank you very much for that. Sorry, I just keep muting myself. That was an excellent session and very well answered questions. Thank you so much to both of you. Everybody who is still with us, we would love to hear your feedback. We would love you to jump onto the Facebook wall, facebook.com/WBECS. I know quite a few of you didn't have your questions answered, so please feel free to jump on there and put your questions and comments on there as well. That would be super. I believe this is the only session we have today, so this is the final session for today. We have some further sessions coming up later on in the week. But for now, I would like to give another massive thank you to Joseph and Andrea for a super session. And I will look forward to their full session in June. I believe is it June the 26th, your full session?
Yes.
That's it, June 26th, same time, same place.
Okay, fantastic. We'll look forward to that. It'll be a lot more of a reasonable time for me because I will be in the UK then, so I will be a lot more exciting in my demeanour. So, and my facial expressions will be lots bigger smiles than waking up at 5:45 in the morning. Okay, well, thank you once again. I'm going to call this session to an end and have a wonderful day, everybody. Get out there and get those big smiles going as you're going through your day. Okay,
Yeah,
take care.
don't forget the eyes.
Yeah, and don't forget the eyes. Yeah, the eyes are a critical one.
Thank you very much, Ben. Thank you very much, everybody.
Yeah, thank you, Ben. Thank you, everyone.
See you in June.
Thanks a lot. See you in June. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.